The southern cassowary time is running out, with less than 1,200 to 1,500 wild birds left in Australia. They are comparable to the number of great pandas left in the wild in China. In December 2014, the southern cassowary was listed as endangered under the Commonwealth Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. Under the Queensland Nature Conservation Act of 1992, the wet tropics population is listed as endangered, and the Cape York populations are listed as vulnerable. The southern cassowary is responsible for being the main distributor of large fruit seeds in the rainforests of northern Queensland. Responsible for the distribution of over 150 rainforest plants that rely on them to eat their fruits and berries, and then defecate them out into the rainforest further away from their parent plant. The conservation for these birds will have a significant flow-on effects for many other species in the northern Queensland coastal rainforest areas. If these birds were gone, the rainforest regeneration after cyclones would collapse, and any chance of the forests regenerating would take many more years than it already does. The rainforests of northern Queensland are unique in their ability to recover after the cyclones that devastate this region in an all-too-frequent basis. And the flagship species, the southern cassowary, has been proved to be the only bird that can eat the forest fruits in such large quantities and distribute the seeds over large territories. The southern cassowary is primarily found in rainforests and the associated vegetation, but the cassowary is also found using woodland, swamp, and disturbed habitats for a year-round supply of fleshy fruits. They occur in three distinctive broad populations: in the wet tropics, widely distributed from Cooktown just north of Townsville, in the coastal lowlands between Ingham and Mossman, and in the tablelands. Wide development of Queensland has benefited many millions of people. The setting of the land, infrastructure, and buildings in the southern cassowary areas have a devastating effect on the birds. More than 80% of the coastal lowland rainforests that the cassowary inhabit have been cleared over the last 100 years. The building of roads has fragmented the forests, and the pieces can no longer support the large southern cassowary numbers it once did. The birds attempt to cross the roads and find food, but often become killed in the process. Well-meaning interfering do-gooders feed the cassowaries, encouraging them closer to vehicles and to traffic. This also encourages human interaction. This not only creates a problem of attacks on humans as the cassowaries lose their fear of us, but they have a greater opportunity to have interactions with dogs, which are another major factor for their decline, because they are then attacked and killed. Studies have shown that nearly a quarter of the remaining cassowary habitat has poor conservation protection, and the probability of it being developed further are extremely high. Furthermore, the links between the remaining patches of rainforest dwindle, and these are considered essential for the cassowary to survive in the wild. It is important to bear in mind that with most large animals, they are slow to develop. They live for 30 to 40 years, and statistics of survival are slow in their early years, with only 1 in 4 eggs generally making it through the 9-month period to become independent cassowaries. They will then take an additional 3 years after independence to reach sexual maturity. The southern cassowary cannot afford to wait for conservation to deliberate the amount of time it has left, because by the time deliberation is done, these mighty birds will be gone. Although the cassowary have been known to both contract aspergillosis and avian tuberculosis, these diseases are both opportunistic and were mainly found during and after the effects of Cyclone Larry in 2006, where there was a mass shortage of food in the forest areas, causing undue stress for the birds. In 2007, the government had already put in place a recovery plan for the southern cassowary. This was prepared by Peter Latch of the Cassowary Recovery Team. This conservation document set out the whole ecology of the southern cassowary and what would be done to further help it. Further to this, in 2009, the government created the Significant Impact Guidelines for the endangered southern cassowary wet tropics population. Owing to these guidelines and recovery action plans, it is now illegal for people to feed cassowaries. The local residents have been encouraged to control roaming dogs through the Be Cassowary program. Maps of cassowary habitat and identified areas of corridors to protect were done. The Cassowary Conservation Local Area Plan was formed with the local planners. A monitoring system was set up for key habitat areas. The genetic structure of the cassowary population at Mission Beach was determined, and most importantly, a local community awareness program for cassowaries conservation began. Community projects to regenerate rainforests, remove weeds, and plant reconnection corridors were undertaken. The implementation of the Cassowary Reaction Plan in 2007 was in part at least successful. The community awareness programs were successful, especially in Etty Bay, Queensland, where the cassowaries are given the right of way on the beach and in the town, and tourists are educated on large signs about the cassowaries. Because of the constant interaction with humans in this town, the cassowaries do not seem aggressive in this neighborhood, and the community itself is proud of these cassowaries. So what does the future hold for the southern cassowary? Where to now? If we maintain status quo as it is, eventually the cassowary numbers will decline. The cassowaries will only be found in zoos. A minor change that we can implement to help these mighty birds is fencing along major roads to prevent them from being hit by further cars. Better communication with the community encourages long-term conservation agreements for native vegetation for private property. For example, no more clearing of land, reforestation with native trees and plants, rather than introduced flowering trees and mowed paddocks. A major change which would allow the genetic flow and the migration of cassowaries in times of low food and times of distress would be the Big Bird Project, as proposed by the Australian Rainforest Foundation. This project plans to create a 250-kilometre long wildlife corridor along the West Tropical Rainforest coast. In conclusion, the southern cassowary, whilst has faced hard times, is on the road with the help of scientists and conservationists for a better future. Meaning these majestic big birds will see yet another sunrise.